Call this November 30th Brown County Commission meeting to order. Commissioner Weiss, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. Good morning. First item, approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Sutton, second by Weiss to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, we have the first reading, ordinance 206, fire safety revision.
Ordinance 206, an ordinance amending Title 18 Fire Safety, second revision, Brown County ordinances.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to look at that ordinance?
Through it pretty thoroughly.
I'll move it. I'll second it for a matter of...
I have a motion by Weiss, second by Plankert to approve the first reading. We'll open up for discussion.
When does the second reading, or how long does it take before it actually goes into effect?
20 days after the publication, so... The second reading will be Tuesday, the 7th, and then 15 days will be the 15 plus 20, so probably January. It's on the, so it's January 5, sometime around there.
January 5th? I know I had a phone call, and I think Mike is concerned about it too. I had a phone call, and it just looks to me like, I mean, it does everything according to the weather maps and weather
Service designation.
conditions and everything, but then at the end, it kind of puts our emergency manager right back into control of the whole entire thing. He can call the shot in the end, and I'm not sure that that's what the people out there want. It looks to me like maybe we need to, I think, what is it, Dickey County?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
Sure. I would, I know we talked about the last time we had a meeting, and, I had Dickey counties. I talked to Kevin Barton. I think he's the fire chief in Frederick there, the rural fire department. And I think he never seen the final draft, but he had talked to, Scott must have talked to him or something, probably a few months ago or something. And he recommended adopting Dickey counties. Something, that type of language, but there's quite a few things different on the weather service in Dickey counties. Right now you have high, and they start at very high. Well, if you start at high, we'll never get to burn, because you have to have conditions on the farm to be able to burn, and it's got to be dry enough to burn. You got to have flammability, right? And if you start at high, I mean, you just won't be able to burn. I mean, you effectively got a burning ban all the time. I mean, nobody, even Paul Johnson, which is input, I thought Scott Mine said he included in there too, he recommended Black Hills starts at very high too, not at high. And there's some language in there, let's say if you have an incinerator, there's no language in there for that, if there is a burning ban in effect. I think I emailed you guys some copies of what I recommended in changes, and some of that first language where I struck out, if you have some of them things, if it goes back and that's not a proper fire break, if it gets out, well, you got some things that are out of control. What if a whirlwind goes through? I mean, these are things you can't prepare for. A whirlwind or a rodent runs out, he's on fire, right? God help us all if that happens. But, those are things that are out of control, but yet you're going to be held with a Class 1 misdemeanor if something like that happens. I think that's a little excessive. The language is pretty redundant and kind of confusing. You kind of go back, it could be really cleaned up, and I don't know why we can't adopt something like Dickey counties. I mean, it fits on one page. It's very easy. And you guys can still put a burning ban if you feel like it. I mean, why would you start at high when you still have the power put on a burning ban anytime you want yet, I mean.
Because then we're turning around using our discretion. I thought that was the whole point of the thing, is to use something that's consistent that you can reference. And that was my concern right out of the chute.
Well, then
Was
start at very high.
where are you gonna put the brake? But then from a common sense standpoint, and see, that's where, you know, they're using different measurements that may not apply specifically, you know, because they're
National Weather Service all uses the
pretty
same.
broad
same
strokes.
stuff.
But, you know, if it says the fire danger's high, let's go burn. I mean, just the nomenclature, when you look at it, says fire danger's high. Should we be burning?
Oh, I'd like to use a reference.
And that-
We all
and that-
drive, everybody drives as a car, right? As soon as it's icy roads, we have hazardous conditions, nobody's banning driving, right?
Mhm.
Drive with caution. That would be the same thing with this fire, I mean, you gotta be able to burn. If you can't burn in high fire, I mean, you gotta have a combustible, otherwise you're not burning, right? I guess that's the input I would contribute to it, so. We're the minority as landowners out there. That's why in cars, people get to drive when it's icy and it's snowing out, right? It's more dangerous, right?
Right.
It'd be high.
Well, I get the frustration.
Extreme
I
would
get
be
the
blizzard when we
frustration,
stop travel, is extreme conditions.
Mhm.
Here I'd recommend starting at very high, that'd be less than extreme. And red flag warnings, I mean, those are high fire, they're still there. I mean, they'd still kick it out. That's pretty much all I got to say on that. Well, I would like to add one more thing. It would be nice to see on the website, if I want to look up the minutes, we're usually at least 2 to 3 weeks behind. And then if you look up the agenda, like this ordinance is not attached to the agenda, so it's very difficult to see what the county's talking about when you can't see it on the website. I mean, I gotta do my due diligence to get one of you guys send me a copy of the draft. I mean, it should be, if we're gonna, especially something like first readings or ordinances, they should be attached on the website, I would recommend, so.
I
Thank you for
would
your
agree
time.
with that as well. We can look at a software that would facilitate that process.
Thank you.
I think we need to do that so the public's more
Yeah, we-
informed.
Yeah.
And I agree with your, few of the corrections that you made, Mike, and I circled those. The word political is misspelled in the second paragraph under chapter 1802. The word radius is misspelled, and then on page 2, 180703, the second line, any person who shall create, commit, maintain, or permit to be created, committed, or maintained an open burning, I think it should say an open burn, because that just doesn't seem to read right. Maintained an open burning, it should just be the word burn, so.
All those mistakes have been in the draft since August too, so.
So those corrections just need to be noted for the final draft. So, Mr. Elson, in your opinion, if we would change it to very high instead of high, that would somewhat satisfy some of your concerns?
I would say, the recommendations, I think you need to control, have in there, when you do have a burning ban on, if you got an incinerator, if it's what did I say in there, a closed,
The three that are addressed are charcoal grill, liquid fuel
no,
grill,
I think
and
I had
outdoor
some
fire.
red, something
Oh.
by there I suggest enclosed fire, so if you got a enclosed fire, if you're burning device, that should be excluded from the burning ban. I use, a lot of us have incinerators on the farms, or, some people have wood burners that are separate. Actually, they wouldn't be able to, if you have a burning ban, they wouldn't be able to use that. You'd be really against the ordinance, the way it's stated now. I think you should need to include as exemptions, enclosed burning devices,
Just as simple as burn barrels with cover on.
Well, I'd just say enclosed.
Yeah, but that ain't.
Burn barrels, you could say 55 gallon, and then, well, I got 500 gallon, or I got,
Yeah.
or if you got a boil,
Yeah.
those guys that burn wood.
Yeah, not to put in there, but as.
That's big.
Yeah,
That's not in there.
right.
I mean, that, you'd be out on violation currently with that proposed ordinance. You did get that correct, I had it written and read, did
Yes.
that kind of
Yeah,
show?
yep, looking at it.
Yep.
I guess then in that first paragraph, there was some added language from the first draft I thought was kind of redundant and very confusing. Again, if something, an act of God, the whirlwind went through, that's completely out of your control, no matter what kind of fire measure you take. I don't think you should be kind of held responsible for that, and that was something that was kind of added from the, actually more restrictive from the first draft, so. The county is still, if things got really crazy, you can still put a burning ban on it. You guys can. No matter if, what kind of ordinance you have, you know, you still have that power. We'd hope that you wouldn't do that all the time, or you go by the scientific method.
Well, that's our whole goal here, is to tie it to some type of, like the National Weather Service, whatever their designation is for the time period, rather than just have it discretionary. So
Sure.
it's tied to some kind of science.
Which is far from exact, because we talked about the yields could be far different within 1 quarter, much less across the county.
Exactly.
So kind of burning conditions.
Yeah, in a county this size, one size doesn't necessarily fit all, but we have to start somewhere.
There would be another nice addition if you could. I mean, right now you have to call into the call center. I don't know if there's, you talked about having something web-based, so if I had my phone, I could pin my location when I'm burning, that would be so much easier. Take a picture of Google Maps or something, put it on. Maybe that's too much, but it'd make it simpler, you know, when you call in, you gotta give your location, use the street. I mean, it's not quite as precise, but I don't know if that's possible or not.
Do you want a substitute motion with those corrections, or?
I would be okay with changing the category to start with very high, and also make reference to the enclosed burning devices somewhere, incorporate that into the not included list. So I would offer a substitute motion to substitute, or to eliminate high and have the fire index when it reaches very high, and redraft it to add the words enclosed burning device so that they're not excluded from the ban.
Are you looking to describe any type of enclosed burning devices, or are you just gonna leave it wide open? Because I'm sure you could take, and enclosed burning devices could be one of 10 things in people's eyes. And that's where I have a concern with just leaving it wide open, because somebody always has a way of neglecting to take care of business, and that's why I don't know. I think, you know, you state, like, one of the things is incinerators, outdoor burning, heat boilers, that type of thing. Do you want to start specifying, or you just want to leave it as wide open? That's the only thing I'll say. I mean, that's up for opinion, I mean, I guess.
And I guess that would be my argument also, Mike, is that if it's an enclosed burning device, there should be no danger of that getting outside of that enclosed area. If you describe an enclosed burning device.
I know how much some people call it a closed burning device, so.
But you could say 80% enclosed, would that suffice?
Well, I guess that's the only thing I'll say about that. I mean, I'm open for it, but I guess I would bring that up, that I'm a little concerned about what some people consider to be an enclosed burning device.
But I guess you could argue every one of those, a charcoal grill. I mean, it says what it means, but one person's idea of a charcoal grill might be totally different than the way it's described in here. So no matter what you put in, there might be a way of arguing your way out of it, or around it.
contained instead of enclosed.
I like that.
Contained burning device?
Yeah. An obligation put on the burner to have something that's adequately contains the fire. If he gets away,
Until it's not.
obviously,
Until
he
it's
didn't have
not.
it contained. But I mean, that's how you can,
Right.
So we make it with those amendments?
Can we get a list of the amendments, or recap them, please?
We can probably print off Mike's example I was looking at on my phone, and he's got it in red, what we're looking at.
So our emergency manager is not here today. Someone will need to get with him to have these changes prepared by Friday, so it can be for second reading on Tuesday.
Let's get that published on the website, so.
Say, Doug, I just have one question. That last, you know, I crossed it out, that last set. I'm just really confused about, is that something you guys are willing to do too? It's just very confusing, that last sentence. I really don't know what
You're
it-
talking about 18.8704.
On the first page, yeah.
The very last, yeah. The ordinance is declared to be necessary for the immediate preservation of the public safety and,
Oh, no.
No, open burning as provided
oh, okay.
herein shall automatically be suspended during any time the above-mentioned categories are not in effect. Open burning as provided here shall automatically be suspended, so there would be no open burning during any time the above-mentioned categories are not in effect.
I guess
Well, see,
that's
what
all
that,
right.
what that does for me is, it negates all the rest of the ordinance. And the rest of the ordinance don't mean anything.
Well, I'm not sure why it's even necessary.
I believe that, I agree that it's redundant, and it adds to the confusion because the way you read it, yeah, it's hard to understand what they're,
Oh, okay, yeah.
I would also include that, the striking of that sentence, open burning as provided herein shall be stricken. I'll include that in my substitute motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have the amendments to the ordinance. I'm gonna go through them. Open burning as provided here shall automatically be suspended during any time during the above-mentioned categories are not in effect. We're striking that.
Correct.
Radius is a correction on the one part. We are gonna add, but not to include enclosed burning devices. Current language would ban incinerators, other outdoor wood burning heat boilers and such. That's gonna be corrected. And we're
Somehow
gonna,
incorporated in,
right, incorporate into the language, and we're gonna go from high to make it very high.
And then also change the political, it's called political.
Political misspelled.
Correct all
Correction
misspelling.
that.
Yeah, there we go, that's the easiest way to do it.
Correct all misspelling.
And then the top one, the escape of any such burning shall be deemed prima facie for, let's see, evidence that a fire break was insufficient. Are we removing that also? That's under 18.01.
I didn't include that in my motion, I guess that it was discussed but not really touched on.
That would be the only one that would be,
I recommend removing it just because, you know, like I say, that whirlwind thing, act of God thing happens, like somebody's having a controlled burn, there's only so many things he can do.
But if you're gonna make the decision to do it, you're still responsible for it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Taking that out doesn't really change that, but, I mean, that's pretty,
do you want that in your motion also?
I'm okay with leaving that.
I am too.
Leaving it?
I am too, yeah.
Okay, so we're leaving that part of it. Okay, we have the amended motion. Motion was by Sutton, second by Weiss. Correct?
Yep.
Correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have an amended ordinance.
Who's gonna communicate with our emergency manager on these changes?
What's that?
Who's gonna go over it with Scotty to make sure he
I will.
understands.
Next item.
Better?
It's like,
Next item, we have the Aberdeen City Library 2022 budget.
Good
Morning,
morning.
Joe.
Good morning. This isn't near as exciting as the last commission meeting I came to. I just wanted to...
Spice it up a little, come on.
I'll start off a little bit, and then let Troy talk about it. But one of the things that concerned me when I got here was there seemed to be no consistency behind the library funding. What did it mean? And so if you go back to statute, if a county doesn't have a library, they should support the public library. Usually there's one public library, it's usually in the county seat town. It makes sense. I've dealt with this a long time, but it's never been consistent anywhere I've been. So when we sit down this year, the library board proposed kind of not, let's just throw a number out, which seems to be what had happened before and was tied to something totally not related to the library. And so I want Troy to talk about that proposal, but just so that you understand that that was where that came from, was to make it something that you could say, we're paying the library this amount because it relates to a fee that gives our county residents outside of the city of Aberdeen free access to that library. That's what it does. I understand that somewhere along the line, it wasn't always this way, but somewhere along the line it was tied to the museum. That's not fair to the library board. The library board gets to set their own policy. We can talk about that museum some other way. Mike and I've had some conversations, and I have some thoughts, and we can look at that. But the library's got an administrative board, so they kind of get to make their own decisions. So I think strapping them with the museum isn't fair to them. Maybe running away from the museum isn't fair to you, so let's see if we can figure that out. But Troy, do you want to go ahead and talk about where you came up with what that dollar amount relates to?
Maybe I'll have Shirley talk a little bit about historically where that started from and where we're at now.
Well, I've worked at the library. I'm the library director, Shirley Arment, and I know several of you. I've been around forever. I started working at the library in 1975, so I probably remember the history of this better than most people. And when I started working at the library years ago, I believe the county paid the city $70,000 a year for library services. In 2001 to 2003, it was $50,000. It went down to $20,000 in 2005, $15,000 in 2008, and $12,000 in 2012. And that's, I think, where it became tied with the idea of the museum money that was coming from the promotional funds, and it stayed that way now since then. In the meantime, the library has built a brand new, beautiful facility, the city has in Aberdeen, and we have a lot more options now than we used to have. Right now, there are 2,200 county residents living outside the city of Aberdeen that have library cards, but anybody can use the library without a fee. You can come in and use our computers, use our books, use anything in the facility, the meeting rooms. You can do any of that without paying anything. But there are, over 2,000 people right now that have library cards. If you live outside the county, we charge $42 a year for a library card, or people can do a monthly fee or a quarterly fee. But generally it's about $42 a year. I think the history of the library board hasn't, this would have been back in about 2008. The county gave the city nothing for library service, and the library board and the city decided to charge the residents of the county, and it was not something that was fun for any of us. So people were very upset. I think the county board, if any of you were around back then, would remember that. I know the library board does, and I do, because I was working at the front desk at the time. And I don't think anybody wants to go back there. But I think what happens with public libraries is the fact that people say to me all the time, but this is all free. Nothing costs us anything. Everything's free. And renting a public library, and if you've been in our public library, it's a beautiful, wonderful facility. Nothing we do is free. Everything we do costs money, and there has to be some value to what is done. And maybe Troy wants to add to what the board's feelings.
Yeah, I've been a part of the board for years, and it's always just been baffling and confusing to me how this is a moving target number and it's not consistent. It's very difficult for budgeting, and so I would just encourage some sort of standard that we can agree on, that we can look forward to and work with every year.
And the 14,000 was like $2 per resident, there was some science behind it, some math at least.
Used to tie it to something, and I don't remember exactly how the finances work, but I recall the county participated years ago with Bookmobile that traveled throughout the county, and we do have library services that are available in Groton. We used to have a library in Columbia, and you probably know more than I would, which other small communities we serviced in the past, but we used to go back and forth with the Bookmobile, as I recall, books from the library as well as from the state
The bookmobile,
inventory.
it was actually housed at the old library on Klein Street.
Right.
It was housed in our garage, and the books were kept in the basement. And there was a staff that worked down there, because when I first started working at the library, I worked with those people in the basement. That's where all our offices were. And that was, they also paid on top of the fee, they paid for use of our library, they paid a fee for storage of their books and the bookmobile storage and all that, and the staff back in that.
Yeah, it's been quite a while ago, but I remember it was pretty traumatic when we decided to let the Bookmobile go. And I think it was partly because it had gotten so old that it would turn one direction but not the other or something, and it was just too costly to fix and replace for the amount of usage that it waned of it. So, yeah, these things continue to kind of evolve, but, you know, the services that you provide at the library are very valuable and important to people, and come at some sort of a reasonable level of support. But frankly, you know, there has been kind of a thought about, you know, budgets are tight in a lot of situations, and it comes and goes a little bit. Some years are worse than others. You know, they are quite different, but it is unusual that, you know, the county runs the museum pretty much on its own with whatever resources and what it can get. Also, you know, benevolence of some folks with the foundation and that type of thing, and they're pretty cautious about how they use that, but it's a highly unusual situation. The county pretty much does that on its own if there is a museum situation, and that thing evolved, you know, from that building being donated with, you know, basically to get out from underneath back taxes, if you will, way back in the day. So, I mean, things evolve in very strange ways sometimes, but that is, you know, frankly, part of, you know, some of the consideration, whether it's appropriate or not, some of those decisions, so. Your request is for us to restore that funding at that level, or you got thoughts on what's appropriate going forward, or what are you thinking?
I think we'd like the proposal seriously considered.
Okay.
Any questions or concerns, certainly here to answer. I think library usage overall doubled since the new building.
Absolutely.
It's certainly a draw to the community.
Didn't the request though went from 12,000 to 14,000?
Yeah, once we attribute it to a...
But I mean, that happened in the interim. Originally, 12,000 was asked for, and then I think the last request later was 14,000. I'm just curious as to how that got expanded another $2,000.
Well,
Seemed
no.
like after the county first had taken a stand that maybe we would only contribute half, 6,000, then the next notice we got, it went from 12,000 to 14,000, and we're just kind of curious about that.
No, the original proposal was 14 that I sent over here. When Kathy sent me the proposal, I put 14,000 on there
14 was for
originally.
2022.
Yes.
Prior years were 12.
Yes.
Yes.
But 2022, they did initially request 14.
Somehow I missed that connection.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And that's tied to essentially roughly a little bit less than what the population of the county is.
The overall population of the county, or just the rural population?
Well, that's tied directly to that.
Tied
The rural
directly to-
population's about 10.
The rural population's like 13,
Yeah.
12 and a half, 13,000 in the outside, and the city is what, 26.5, 27?
28.5 now.
25.
I recall it was, we were talking about the non-incorporated,
Right.
you know, everything outside of Aberdeen.
So,
Tied to that.
about $1 a head is what it amounts to.
Yeah.
Per resident.
Okay.
Well, one of the things, I'm sure this has been explained, one of the reasons that we dropped, probably the city was one of the other things. One of our outline libraries is doing a big upscale redo in their library. And they requested more than normal, than what they normally would. So that puts us in a position, now when they want more, you want more, where's the county budget come in at? And that's kind of why we, I think, went down that road, is that their request, we felt that, and it's the Groton Library, and we felt the people in Groton probably were, if they were that interested in increasing their library, that we would expand our balance to them. That's where this thing, where I kind of got off, is where we felt Groton, for the first time, had asked for more money than normal to get their library updated. That's where that money for the Aberdeen went over to the Groton. You know, it's hard for the county to keep expanding our budget for all these requests, because we're locked into what we get for income. And that's where we get in this position where, who do we keep giving money to? Because, I mean, we gotta put a line in the sand somewhere. And that's kind of how we ended up in this. Now, I don't know if anybody agrees with that or disagrees, but that's kind of how I felt this all came about, is when Groton requested more than what they normally would.
Yeah, that was part of the conversation. It wasn't necessarily intended to be permanent, but because that was a new request with new circumstances.
How much does Groton request?
6,000. And that's where we were going with 12, we went with 6 to the city, we went 6 to Groton. That's kind of where that original 12 was, is where we were at. Now, I'm sure you were aware of that. Maybe you weren't. It's pretty quiet, everybody's
Yeah.
thinking that.
The Groton Library is really nice, you know.
You spend a lot of time there, don't you?
Occasionally,
Have you been in our library here in town?
Oh, yeah. Well, you're not exactly talking apples to apples.
Well, I would be interested too in how many card holders they have in Groton and how many people they're serving compared to the
Mhm.
2,000 card holders at our library. We serve a lot of people, and anybody from the county can come to our programs, our children's programs, our adult programs, all of those things we're doing that without charging anybody outside of the money we get from the city. There are no fees for anything that we do, unless you live outside the county and are getting a library card.
Does the city library, do they have a foundation? Is there a foundation created there? There is.
They contributed 2.1 million towards the new building.
How much?
2.1 million. Privately raised.
What was the amount that Carl Lee, KO?
900,000.
He put 900,000 into it. What's the overall budget for the library, total starting budget?
Well, with salaries, it's probably close to, I don't know, for next year,
You're gonna ask me that. I was gonna look before, to what we approved this year.
2 million,
I was
1.5
gonna
maybe
say
with
1.6.
salaries? 1.6 with
1.6
salaries, with
million.
the salaries, yeah.
Well, I am the liaison to the museum board, not the foundation board, but the museum board. And I guess I understand perfectly that we're talking two separate things here, that's an issue, that those dollars come out of the promotion fund, but, in kind of defense of the museum, and you've got the museum and you've got the library, they each serve their own purpose, and the promotion funds, in my opinion, the funding of the museum at $12,000 a year that's been, you know, historically the amount that the city's been providing, to me, is money well spent, because the Dakota Prairie Museum is a destination. When people come to town, it is visited by a lot of out-of-town people, as well as the programs that they provide to the Aberdeen School District, and that's another story for another day too. But it does provide a valuable service, and it is a destination for visitors to Aberdeen. So to me, it's a perfect fit for the use of those promotion funds. Having said that, you know, and I've been a commissioner, I'm just finishing my 13th year, and we send the city a check for $12,000 for the library, the city sends us a check for $12,000 for the museum, well, we could just, well, not do either one, and we'd both be in the same boat, because it zeroes itself out. So it never really made a lot of sense to me, but it's still showing support for the library on the county side, and it's showing support from the city towards the museum.
Sure.
So I guess I would like to see some effort made to reconsider the use of those promotion funds and help support the museum, and we at the same time can reconsider and see what we can do for the library.
Right, right.
And I understand you're tying two different things together, I understand that perfectly, but it is showing support from us to the library and the city to the museum, so.
And I get that. There are many, many things that the city and the county do together. It's not always a tick for a tack, but I said the same thing. That's kind of weird. Why do we just exchange checks in a ceremonious, duel in the street, It's like that. But one of the things that happens too is, anytime you're asking for money, the promotions fund is kind of this moving target, so to speak. And so I arrived in the middle of the pandemic, and one of the biggest things was we don't have enough money in the promotions fund to do what we had to do, so we had to make some cutbacks. And we said, don't ask us for operational funds every year. Ask us for things towards projects. The museum was one of them that came in and said, just give us the $12,000 like we're always doing. We want to fund bigger things that do draw people in. So now there's talk about the KOLE money being used for changes at the museum. That's the exciting things that we want to use the promotions fund for, not just operating expenses. We want to. So maybe all of a sudden, maybe it's not 12,000 every year. Maybe it's every 5 years it's 50,000. That might be something, because boom, it does something really impressive. The promotions fund for several organizations and nonprofits has turned into just another little operating check. We want to do really cool things with that promotions fund.
And when you look at the line items in the museum, they have, again, as long as I've been here, they've directed that $12,000 towards the promotions line. So it's money that they put into the advertising that they do.
Sure.
For those people visiting Aberdeen, heads on beds, those people are the target people that we use that promotion fund to try and get to the museum. So, we're kind of using the money for the purpose it was intended, in my opinion, as far as the promotion fund, because it does draw people to the museum while they're in town. So.
And then it also gets back to that's the whose job is it to promote these things?
Yeah.
We give $500,000 to the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and we give $100,000 to the chamber, and so they need to market better for these folks too. So.
Well, and another thing too, both the library and the museum are, it's educational.
It is.
People, younger people learn, and older people too, learn from those experiences, whether it's at the library or the museum.
Right.
So do we want to take it under consideration? Is that something that the commission wants to discuss? Are we ready to make a decision today?
I don't think we're ready to make a decision today. I mean, we've already established our 2022 budget.
It is adopted, it can be amended.
Yep.
We do have the surplus cash, for a couple $1,000s we're talking about here. I'm an advocate of the library, I guess. I'd like to see it happen, but I don't get a say, so.
I think we just take it under consideration and wait till we have a full 5-person commission present and discuss it and see how we want to move forward. And maybe at the same time, the city can at least revisit the museum and see if, we were all impacted by COVID and the surplus cash that the auditor referred to. I know both the city and the county were the recipients of a fair amount of COVID relief money that was unprecedented on our part, and I'm sure the city's also. So I mean, if there was ever a time where we're both probably sitting on more cash than we've ever had, it's right now.
Yeah.
So we're sitting here arguing over $6,000, but still.
Maybe at some point, I mean, you brought up a very good point too, at some point in time, maybe the county and the city should get together and actually have a discussion about the things that we share and the, you know, I don't know if benefits are the right word, but for the citizens of the people that live in the city and those in the rural areas, and just have an open discussion about all of those things that we partner on, or that, I mean, that's more than just the library and the museum by a long shot.
You're getting into, you're speaking to the choir now, because that's one of the things you said, Maria, I'm not sitting at these meetings all the time, and you're not sitting at ours, but we read something in the paper. Lisa does a nice job of covering both of us, and like, hey, I think we kind of have that same problem, we can help with that, or, you know, well, I can help with that. I think those are the things, so, yeah, I think I would definitely welcome a conversation if you wanted to appoint a couple of folks. I know not to get a quorum to kind of start talking about those sort of things. There's a couple of big issues, I think, on your plate that we could maybe help with, so I think that's a good idea.
There's some roads along the outside edge of Aberdeen that the city could take over.
I was trying to be really gentle about that, maybe sneak it in later, like you had to go plowing right through the middle.
He just took credit
Right through the middle.
Well, I guess, we'll just kinda take it under advisement. What's that?
These two wanna have that conversation?
I guess that's not good.
I think that would be appropriate.
Well, I appreciate your time. I think, I think it'll be up for discussion with the commission.
Thank you.
And we'll see where it goes from there.
Thanks.
We'll be in touch. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
No, I was thinking the same thing, but I didn't wanna go too far in.
Well, it could be part of that whole
Probably
discussion.
Oh, good. Go
Probably
ahead.
better coming from one of us.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Our family uses that service too, it is a nice service to work.
The library?
Yeah.
Do you use this one or the one in Frederick?
Aberdeen.
Aberdeen, okay.
I wonder if there's parameters set on what they can use foundation money for. Curious about that. I mean, if they've got, how many, 2 million in the foundation, or just about 2 million? Can't they use that for operating budget? I mean,
No,
I
I don't think it was intended for that. It's got a
Yeah, I don't know.
conversation.
More for special projects. I know that's what the museum uses yours for, you know, bringing into the
Well, the amount of promotion that they do with social media and stuff, and maybe it's not communicated well with the request, I think, because they kinda got used to it, so.
Yep.
They do a lot of special.
Okay, next item, we have Mr. Dirk Rogers, Highway Superintendent. Looks like we got some right-of-ways and department updates.
You kind of see what I'm asking, or how,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a stretch, I know.
You're late again?
Yeah, I mean, it was even a light agenda today. We got a right-of-way occupancy. It's kind of the tail end of that same NBC stuff where they're just updating from the old copper line to the fiber line. And it's on one of my most favoriteest roads in the whole county around Stratford. It'll be on the east-west mile of Stratford, and then it comes down here a mile. So, other than that.
Oh, right along the west side of Stratford?
Yeah, well, I think the only place on that side's Jarks, on the
Yep.
south side of the road, if I remember right.
Okay.
And then it comes down, they're gonna have to bore, they must have to go, it says they're gonna bore under the road, so the existing service must be on the other side. But they're basically doing, it's for that east-west mile, and then going south a mile.
I'll move it.
second.
Moved by Planker, second by Sutton, to approve the right-of-way for NBC. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
The
Motion
old
carries.
copper line.
The old copper line.
Should be offended.
I know, you should be. Back in the old days.
That was pretty fancy when they put all that stuff in.
You helped area, right?
With the,
Right.
ceramic insulators on it.
Mhm,
I mean, candle holders.
Yeah, candle holders. We're just still getting going, actually hauling gravel right now. We're up in the northeast part of the county with that.
Where?
Where specifically? And then east of Mike, we're further east of Mike.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Don't get too close.
No. And then, John.
Good to see you this morning.
Yeah, that stays for sure. I know, I figured he was.
We noticed.
John's doing the culvert inventory, and we had a few bugs, but we got that kinda worked out, and seems to be going the way it's supposed to, and it's kinda neat, I can't tell you where to go look for it without getting the information, but it all goes real time into a database, so if he puts one in there right now, you wait about 30 seconds and you can log on, and it'll show up in the database, and you can look at all the culverts and get an idea. So I think it's working pretty good. Like I said before, we got a lot more money to do the inventory, I think, than we're gonna get to actually replace the culverts, because our condition isn't horrible, and,
Can that money be carried over towards the
yep,
replacement cost?
Yeah.
Whether it's not used for inspections?
Yep.
Bank it or?
yeah, you
inventory?
can. Now, I don't know that they haven't defined exactly how that'll happen, but that's what they said they want to do with it. They don't want to go through the extra level of, okay, well, we use 64,000 of this 90, whatever it is, 95 or whatever, so now we give that back, and then they give us more for the culverts, and we'll see how it comes out, but
Of
yeah.
course, that's just keep it and use it for replacement because it's better.
And, we'll see what the mechanism is. We'll have to communicate with the townships, because as I said before, we're kinda gonna keep doing it the same way we've been doing it. It's just that we have this money that we can use to do it, but, there may be a situation where we go to the township and say, hey, we need you to apply for this pipe so we can replace it and use that money. Now the townships, and this is another gray area that I'm curious to see what's gonna happen when it comes up. The townships have to meet certain criteria in order to, apply for the money.
Sure.
We may have a little heartburn in there for a couple of years trying to switch from kind of the way that we've been doing it, which is a little bit different than most counties, to this place, because my question I asked the state, I go, okay, so you got a 5-foot pipe out there that, let's just say, is critical to the public in general, regardless if it's under a county road or an approach or whatever. And, excuse me, the township doesn't meet the qualifications to access the money, which I can't quote those off the top of my head, but they have to have some kind of 5-year plan and whatever the mill requirements are and all that. So if they don't meet those requirements, and we're sitting here and we still, we being the general public, still want that pipe fixed because of how it's gonna impact everybody, we just still go fix the pipe anyway and
Like
just
we
pay
have
for it,
been
like
doing
we've
in the
been
past.
doing for the last 50 years.
Not all counties have the same working relationship
No.
with their townships as Brown County does.
No.
I've learned
I
that.
brought that up at the township meeting the other night, and I think I kind of offended the executive director a little bit.
Yes.
Because I don't think she really realizes how
Yeah.
different it is from township to township, and then, of course,
County to
Greg
county.
Faber was there, and he kind of straightened that out too, that, we have been, and I used the word over and above, and she didn't like that.
Right.
Anyway, it's the way it is.
Right, and actually that new law that passed, which is good for the majority of the counties, or townships, I think, is really gonna negatively affect Minnehaha and Brookings, and actually Brown probably, not in a big way, but you know what I mean, because what they were doing already, those 3 counties exceeded what this law is requiring them to do,
So they may get
Yeah.
less than they
Yeah,
get
so,
before.
I mean, technically, for the townships in Brown County, where it used to be, give us a phone call, and we go look at it, and then, okay, yeah, whatever, we'll fix it. That has just turned into a whole nother,
Well, it's different, but there's some parallels to that, plus, as example, what we've done in the past, or the way the federal ones for
Right.
bridges are set up, that you gotta apply for it, and you gotta wait, and you gotta do the engineering, and 6 to 7 years later, and by then the traffic patterns have all changed, and if you're waiting to do bridges with that, you're really messing up instead of actually serving the public, and so it is a different way of doing business.
Yeah.
But we did have a really good conversation. I don't know, we vetted everything out. We had a really good conversation at that conference.
Well, there's no question that
And-
there were a lot of townships that got absolutely nothing out of the counties whatsoever. They just don't do anything. I mean, if the township and some of those counties didn't do it themselves, it never got done.
Right.
Well, what you're talking about is things that were taking place way back already when Larry Mitchell was
Oh, yeah.
highway superintendent. I mean, he was working with the townships on those bridges that were out there in the townships that
And
the
some
township
counties-
no way could afford to fix them. The county they wouldn't be there if the
Right.
county hadn't helped take care of them.
Right.
Mike, you had something?
Well, that's.
Well, I'm on Liberty Township, and I'm just curious, I mean, you have to have the size, you're talking about size requirement of 4 foot and bigger culverts, all right?
Yeah,
There's-
15.9.
yeah.
Yep. Well, actually, not even that. See, every culvert on the township system, regardless of size, is the township's.
Yeah, absolutely. I
And
understand.
the only time that 15.9 size thing came in was when you were gonna replace them, okay? What happened here, and I don't know if it's bad, as far as the drainage goes from the whole county standpoint, it's probably better that we're way more involved with it, as far as maintaining infrastructure. You don't always agree with the way the drainage stuff goes, nobody does, but,
So you guys are paying for some culverts, don't they change something, there's some funds for the townships?
yeah.
Yeah, that's what this new law does.
But,
Oh, I guess I didn't know that.
like, if you'd have called us and said, hey, this 5-footer up here has gone to hell or whatever, and we went up and we agreed with you, we'd just put it in.
Oh, yeah, but
Right.
I'm talking about with the new funds now.
The new
smaller
funds.
Existing,
The new ones, are for replacing existing ones that are above that threshold.
oh, on the size, so you still gotta meet the size.
Yes.
All right.
And in addition to that, you gotta have a 5-year plan, and you gotta have some, yeah. Well, and right there's your
It's a
example.
lot of extra
And Mike
responsibility on
is
the
very
township.
responsible, and I don't always agree with him, but he thinks about stuff, and he's
Yeah.
not right, and you just saw his reaction to that.
Mhm.
And he's actually somebody that's on top of stuff, so,
Right.
that's what I'm saying. When we go over to Allison Township and go, hey, we need you guys to submit your 5-year plan and put on your, whatever the valuation requirement is, so that we can use this $5,000 from this fund to go replace that pipe that we would have replaced last year. So, I'm totally not, I think it's great, because they beat this topic with a stick for 10 years before they finally got some kind of legislation through. I mean, I'm not at all being critical about that. But there's some logistics of working through this, and just like when the legislature passes state law and says, all right, all you counties are gonna follow this law, and it doesn't fit everybody, we have the exact same thing times 50
Mhm.
with the townships, and,
Yep.
I
They're
don't...
screaming they want help, and they finally gave them some help, but there's a lot of strings attached to
Boy,
it.
the
Oh,
mechanism
yeah, and
there.
on the township, I mean, you can't have, we don't have designated funds or the
Right.
people to make 5-year plan, I mean,
No, I know, hey, man, I'm all about
or
functionality.
even the county for that.
Right.
I mean,
So
there's
most of the
things
townships
ridiculous.
that are incorporated in most of the rest of the counties are left to do this on their own.
Yeah.
In Brown County and a couple others, because we've kept a handle on it and participated cooperatively, you've got more information in one place, rearranging it a little bit differently in order to do that for our townships, to make sure where's an opportunity to qualify, that we do and take advantage of it.
So once you do the inventory,
Yep.
does that inventory go to each township?
My question exactly. Make it
So,
available
I
to
mean-
each.
I mean, I could give you the pamphlet that they gave Kathy to hand out to all the townships, and you can read in there and tell you where to go find the information.
You all got
How
it.
they're hoping it works.
Yeah, but I mean, again, back to my comment, if I would've come in with the go to this spot and hit this button, and it'll tell you what the culverts are, so I mean, but, I know,
It's accessible.
Well, the thing of it is, it's all over the place, because you got 900 and some townships in all of
Right.
South Dakota, and you're literally gonna have some townships that won't even be there. They just
Really?
won't be there.
and some of them don't.
Then you've got Minnehaha County, Brown County, and Brookings County
Yeah.
that are, been involved in it right from the get-go for 20, 30, 40 years already.
Yeah, and the township thing, just like everything else in South Dakota, radiates out from Sioux Falls. And the further you get away from Sioux Falls, and once you hit the river,
Well, you got a higher population there, so there's more people affected, more people paying attention, and, you know, you have to take a more holistic view. You know, if because that's exactly the example that I had, you know, that we had at James River in a really rural county in Beetle County, where, you know, 2 miles
yeah.
away, two
Yeah.
miles away was a county road, and they changed the capacity of flow through the county road with no consideration or any assistance in the impact it was gonna have on the township roads and the people that, you know, would be affected because of that, and they weren't interested in the conversation.
And
Whereas
that's
we're
what
like,
led-
you know, if we're gonna resize things in the county roads,
Yeah.
what's the impact gonna be on the rest of the system above and below it? And we are gonna participate in trying to minimize any negative impacts that's gonna have. And that's just the way we've been doing business, and I think it's
Yep.
appropriate.
No, and that's a really good example, because you don't just go out, okay, we gotta upsize this one, or in the case of Mud Creek, in the southeast part of the county, it flows both directions.
Right.
So you have to have the pipe size, you can't just go 18 to 24 to 36, you gotta have them all 36 in both directions,
Mhm.
because it backs up as much as it flows south, so, yeah, I don't know.
And that's kinda like the wheel tax. The wheel tax is voluntary, you can put it on, but the projects or how you can spend that money is restricted.
Mhm.
And I think Minnehaha generates
Yes.
10 times more wheel tax than they'll ever be able to use. I don't know if that's the right number, but I mean, it's considerably more because of their population, but they're restricted on what they can use those funds for. So again, one size doesn't fit all.
No, and actually, there was an attempt 10,
Split that up.
15 years ago to use the wheel tax money for public safety,
Yep.
specifically in that county, because that's where their needs were.
Right.
Yep.
And, so, anyway.
Another story for another day.
Mike?
So,
I had a question. I missed the road plan meeting, but, all right, west of, the bridge on 5.
that's next year. See the pink up there?
That's just the one right.
The pink to the left of,
Yay.
Yep. Subject to change.
We got pushed off now, I mean,
Christmas is
no
coming.
more push-offs for us.
Christmas is coming, Mike, just saying.
Yeah, which one?
And I haven't been up on 5 east of Hecla, but I got a call yesterday,
Oh.
and they absolutely
Oh, they let-
are thrilled.
East of Hecla, okay.
Yeah. They're talking left. They are, well,
Maybe told you,
it
it's
goes
your
both
neighborhood, and
directions,
that's
it goes
close.
east and west of Hecla, but east of Hecla, those folks are
Happy.
pretty happy.
Happier than they've ever been, yeah.
Yeah,
Pretty happy.
yeah, that's,
It's pretty rugged there west of the bridge.
yes, it is. Well, that's the second most expensive road in the county to work on, so. The most expensive one is east of Hecla, that we did last.
Sounds like a reality show opportunity.
Yeah.
Just make sure that you save enough money in the budget to get 5 fixed up after they get done with the Elm Lake.
Yep,
I
Dam.
did have one more
yep.
addition. I know when, like on 14, and it's by Aberdeen here, of course, but you know, there's a lot of traffic on there.
Yep.
And, there's not a lot of shoulder, of course, no pavement. I see when you move equipment, I brought a tractor and planter up from home to Aberdeen here, and you get a lot of traffic, and you're getting on that shoulder. Boy, it's pretty rough on that road.
Yep.
I see parts of it crumbling off from people. You can see there's getting to be another track from just farm equipment,
Yep.
having to get over, you know, so.
That's a big problem, especially if you got duals on, and you pull over, and then that outside dual or double is hanging off, and all the weight's right on the thinnest part of the pavement on the one time. I mean,
That's where you should move the roads that are pretty close to Aberdeen.
Yeah.
Oh, my, you know,
Yeah.
that discussion.
Yeah.
I'll let you guys go.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate it.
Take it easy.
Say,
Take
Dirk, the
care.
Elm Lake project,
Yep, I'm actually gonna run up there right.
are they designated to use county road? Because I understand they're using township roads up there, and people are concerned about their township roads, that they're, I guess that's that was brought up to me.
What township?
What
roads?
township road?
Maybe
Yeah,
right.
that's what I'm trying
by,
to figure out.
Thorpe's place, coming through there with trucks.
Why would they be coming in from the west? They'd be in McPherson County.
Well, I guess that's what I was told, is that they're using the township road instead of the county road. And they were wondering if that,
I don't know how they, I don't
Once you turn off
understand.
of 5 and go up the hill, go
Yeah.
up toward, is that county or township?
Until you turn back to the east, so you go up there 1 mile, if you go west, you go over to the bridge, or over to the dam.
Yeah.
If you go east, that's a township road for a mile, because that's where Mrs. Hickson's mailbox is actually a mile over to the east, so I know the mail
Or
gets
if that's the
delivered
one
over
they're
there.
talking about.
But why they, but I don't know how do you get up to that road from 5? That's what I don't know.
But you might just ask that question to the contractor, because there is a concern up there about them using their township roads.
Or road, because I think.
Road.
Which road he's using.
I will, but I'm stunned, because I would like to know which road I'm telling them
Right.
that they can't use, because
There's only one.
there's no roads up there.
There's only
there's-
one,
there's-
why would they be using it?
The only one would be this one. That must be it, 2 miles west of 6.
But then how do they, does that go straight through then, am I?
It must, I mean, it looks like it dies right there.
That's what I thought.
They're using 1 mile of it, maybe.
But that's the that's the counties, there's
That's
no
2.
road there.
That's
This
2,
is
right?
the counties, all this is the counties.
Yeah, just ask him what route they're using.
Huh. I don't know.
Well, if you're going that direction, why don't you just check it out, because it was a township official up there that had mentioned it to me.
Which township? Allison or Palmyra, do you know?
I guess I think it's,
It must have to be
I
out.
don't think it's Allison. Which one does Thorpe's live in?
Well, Thorpe's are,
They
they got
should be-
land,
Up in
but they're over,
Palmyra.
no, they're over in Person County.
Up there, they got,
They got land in Brown County, definitely. But it would be
I
directly.
guess I didn't ask her what road it was, but they just said they're using the township road.
Huh.
Directly west of the dam, about a mile, and then to the south, Thorpe's got land in there.
That's McPherson County.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay, I'll see,
Okay.
but I got no idea.
Huh.
Anything else? We'll have Jeanette's
Yeah, grab a couple pictures.
item?
Yeah, I will.
Approve last week's minutes
That's
on
it?
November
All right.
23rd.
Thank
Approve.
Second.
Moved by Piker,
Thanks, Joe.
second by Sutton, approve the general meeting minutes, November 23rd. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Claims?
Move.
Moved by Sutton, second by Lewis to approve the claims. All in favor?
Aye.
I should say no, but because of, but.
Motion carries.
Go ahead.
There's $450,000 there to give raises to our county employees.
HR report?
Move.
Second.
Moved by Piker, second by Weiss to approve the HR report. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Set hearing date and authorize advertising for 2021 budget supplement.
I did want to clarify, the only form of budget supplement I'm gonna recommend is for the rural infrastructure fund. That's that culvert fund Drew was talking about. We didn't budget for it in the 2021 budget because we didn't know it was going to exist until legislation this year. So we're going to increase the revenue and then increase the expense and the amount of the appropriation we receive.
Okay.
So it's really just procedural. I don't believe any of our departments are gonna need a formal budget supplement. We have contingency if anybody does go a little bit over budget, and I believe that'll be sufficient this year. And we'll present the contingency transfers, at the last meeting of the year.
And that culvert fund is ballpark 90,000?
97.
97,
Yeah, so we'll
okay.
increase revenue 97, and then we'll increase expense 97. Now, of course, we're not gonna spend that much, but
Right.
it'll just match the
Spending
revenue.
authority, right, right.
Yeah, have the
Yep.
authority there.
All right, I'll move it.
Second.
Moved by Sutton, second by Weiss to set the hearing date and authorize advertising 2021 budget supplements. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Memorandum of understanding with SDSU for H 2022.
Move.
Second.
Moved by Sutton, second by Weiss to approve the memorandum with the understanding of South Dakota State University for A4H 2022. I believe it was 21,000 some dollars was the portion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Auditor's report of accounts.
Move.
Second.
Moved by Sutton, second by Weiss to approve the auditor's report of accounts. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That will be it.
I do miss SDSU Extension Roadshow program, remember that?
What's that?
Remember the SDSU Extension? They'd come out once a year and tell us about what they're doing and stuff. Big expense, I'm sure, but it was tough.
Anything else coming before the commission?
If
Erica?
somebody wants an exec.
The only thing is that we had a little bit, talking with Brad Hart about having Mike Scott offer Brad $1,500 for the dump site up at the Elm, and there obviously was the Elm Lake people have no interest whatsoever in participating in that. They say they already do by the $65 that they're assessed for solid waste. They have no mechanism or means of collecting, they don't have a sanitary sewer district or anything like that, so, anyway, I guess that's okay with the rest of the board. I'm just gonna ask Mike Scott today to get in contact with Brad and offer him the $1,500 and let it go at that.
And if he doesn't accept, have any thoughts on what we should do next?
His original
Shut it
ask
down?
was 2,000, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I thought originally we had authorized the offering of $500, but that people up there are coming up with the difference.
Yeah, and that broke down completely.
Right.
I talked with that, I can't even say his name now, he was here, the president of the Elm Lake Association.
Mike Jones, was it?
No, I talked to him too, and got the phone number for...
The other guy.
For the other guy, can't say his name.
Shop.
But anyway,
So thoughts on what we should do if they don't accept the $1,500 offer?
close the gate. Oh, I don't know.
Well, let's take a shot at it and see what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, hopefully they'll agree to it, because otherwise it's gonna cause bigger problems. They'll just start dumping it wherever.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Do you need
Anything
an
else
exec?
coming before the commission?
Motion to go into exec for personnel?
Correct.
Second.
We got a motion by Weiss, a second by Sutton to go into exec for personnel. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are in exec. We are out of exec. No action as a result. Anything else to come before the commission?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by Weiss, second by Sutton to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.